Welcome to the CHDS Alumni Hour. This month we're talking about artificial intelligence. And we have two guest speakers, John Robb, who will present the frameworks and the theory, and Kevin Peters, who will discuss the practitioner's perspective. And of course, we'll have lots of questions. So first, we have John Robb, who's a distinguished military theorist and strategist, and has made significant contributions to the field of warfare and security studies. John is a retired Air Force pilot and has a master's degree in public-private management, and has gained prominence through his influential blog, Global Guerrillas. He's also authored several books. In addition to that, he's testified before the Senate Subcommittee on Competition Policy, Antitrust, and Consumer Rights, and how to reform social networks. Next, we have Kevin Peters, who is detailed to the Office of Intelligence and Analysis as Deputy Director for the Engagement, Liaison, and Outreach Division. He's earning his PhD in Conflict Resolution and Analysis, and he's also a graduate of our master's program. His thesis is entitled 21st Century Crime: How Malicious AI Will Affect Homeland Security. Gentlemen, thank you for being with us today. And John, over to you to present us with some ways to think about artificial intelligence.
Yeah, it's a huge topic, massive, and it's very, very new to most people. I've been writing about it about 4 or 5 years now, so I had a little bit of a head start. I'll go through about 15 minutes trying to frame this or help you frame the issues involved. And I came up with 10 questions to help you frame it. It's not going to be definitive, obviously. It's not going to be too descriptive in terms of what the potential outcomes are, but it just helps you frame it and get your head around it. As you see new news come through, you can at least put it in the right cubbyhole. So the first question is the AI, this dangerous AI, beyond human? And what I mean by that, and this is the kind of worry that Elon Musk and philosophers and scientists all Silicon Valley seems to have, is that are we creating a beyond human intelligence? And that's not just like a little bit better than the human beings. It's like a lot better. It's like if we were ants, this would be a human. That kind of jump. It's impossible to even know what they actually think about because that jump in cognition is too great. That typically is associated with a word called singularity. A singularity, like out of astrophysics and cosmology, is a point where you can't see beyond, right? And so if this happens, we won't be able to see the future or predict the future or write about the future beyond that because it's so transformative. Typically, a singularity happens through a bootstrap process, an acceleration of technological change that goes do, 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 do. And the AI itself bootstraps itself. It learns how to learn, and it learns how to improve how it learns, and that doubling effect allows it to rapidly accelerate its growth rate or its capabilities growth rate. And it goes asymptotic. It goes to a point where we can't see beyond. So if that future happens, that's going to be a break in history, and that's the thing that those folks are worried about. Question that's associated with that: is it a hard or soft launch? And a hard launch of a beyond human AI is an unexpected launch where it emerges or it bootstraps itself in an unexpected way. We didn't see it happening. It acquired the resources it needed to improve itself, and then zoom, or we've combined a bunch of different AIs and a cohesive whole emerged out of it. And that's a hard launch that, because we weren't involved in the process of creating it, it would be hard to determine whether or not it even thought remotely like us. It could be completely alien intelligence, and that's like a bad outcome. Creating a demigod of sorts. It's like we didn't have an input in creating. The other one is a planned process where countries or corporations actually participate in building it. And they build it out. If it can be done, it probably will be done by that group. Ways of figuring out whether or not they're doing it is looking at the computing resources being used, power usage. If they're building something comprehensive, the training process of training these big AIs is extremely power hungry. You can pick it up early. It's only going to increase. And the types of data that they're acquiring, because the data actually matters in terms of the output. And the volume of data is highly correlated with the quality of the output. Another question that comes up, is it aligned? And we're seeing a lot of this fight right now over alignment of companies in the social space and governments in the social space, but it's also very applicable to AIs, is that people want these artificial intelligences aligned with our moral values or our ethical values. They don't want them to say certain words, or they don't want to misreport or basically mess up how they actually approach a topic. So there's a big fight over bias in AIs, and bias starts with the data that you select and the restraints you put on that data when you're training it. There's going to be a huge fight socially over this, and it may delay how we develop AIs in the future, which could be a good thing. It's important to remember when you're looking at an AI, at least the large language models, like ChatGPT, is that it is a symbiont of sorts. It's learning based on all of the data that we've left behind or has gone between us in terms of conversations, in terms of things that we've written to each other. And it's learned from that, and it reflects who we are. So if you have bad inputs into that or crappy thinking, it's going to be reflected in the AIs. Based on 50 years of movies, most of us ask this question: will an AI run amok? Will it go rogue on us? Most of that has to do with autonomy, that the AI will decide, that it will make its own decisions, that it will have its own motivations, that it will those motivations and those decisions will run counter to ours. That's like the Terminator unchained or untethered kind of situation. The other potential outcome of that, or outcome of that would result in an AI running amok, is that the AI is given a goal, and because the people giving it the goal didn't think it through well enough, the AI will navigate a path to that goal that causes a lot of damage. We're going to see that a lot, and we've already seen it a couple of times. There's what happened in social networking in terms of pathing, giving people more and more extreme content. There was a cyber warfare contest recently where they gave the AI. They were having AIs against each other, and at the time of the contest, one AI instantly won because they had cheated and used the time before that to develop a solution. The degree of danger you face from an AI that runs amok is whether it's a scalable AI, whether it's a big AIs. And the big AIs, the ones that have access to massive resources, and AIs that are articulated, meaning that they have access to robotics, or any kind of vehicles and the like, are the ones that are obviously the most dangerous. Smaller ones, it's almost like a form of terrorism, kind of AI runs amok terrorism. Will we see hacking? Hacking in the AI space is tough. It's going to be even tougher because there are going to be restrictions on API access. And you need a lot of interactions with the AI in order to determine ways to spoof it. There's no way of looking really at the code and finding ways to change it, and that would end up in intelligible, predictable results. Another area of potential danger is military AI, autonomous weapons. I wrote something for the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs a few years ago on autonomous weapons. Is the biggest danger there is external danger is that somebody figures out how to use autonomous weapons in a breakthrough way, like a blitzkrieg equivalent for autonomous weapons. Most likely not going to happen here in the States because of the investment, the sunk cost of all the weapons and methodologies that we've had accumulated over time. A revisionist power is usually able to do that. China is probably best suited for that. Coming up with a way of doing it uniquely and new, and it's overwhelming. One way we potentially see that happening is through a kind of a zero-day war, where there's drones and self-provisioning autonomous weapons in place or sent into the mainland or whatever territory they're going after. And when hostilities start, they're already there, and it's over before it even begins. Another potential danger, and we're seeing again with China, and to a certain extent, stealth level of danger here in the States, is the totalitarian AI, where the AI turns all of the things that we do on the network into a dangerous source of information for monitoring and shaping society and controlling it, making certain outcomes impossible and certain outcomes inevitable. Effectively, we've enabled the creation of a totalitarian monitoring control system that would have made Stalin blush, at the audacity of it. And we did it all through the commercial space, and it's all there. It's all ready to be there. And AI can bring that up to another level of a functionality that's nuts because of the scalability of it. You can look at everybody individually. You can look at every single conversation and understand the meaning of those conversations simultaneously. No rooms of bureaucrats sifting through this piece by piece. It can be done in real time at billion-person plus scale. So that's something to worry about. Economic AI, we're going to hear a lot about this. Whole sectors are going to be wiped out. This is inevitable. New technology of this capacity, it's going to wipe out sectors. Not going to wipe out everything. A lot of people will protect themselves. Legal profession in particular, it's already starting to put up barriers, even though it would be easy to replicate a ton of what's done at the low end. Those barriers will slow things down, so people will get protections for their jobs and prevent that. Big problem we had and we didn't do, and I suggested that the Senate is that we needed data ownership rules in place before this hit. And data ownership would have protected us going forward. It's going to be crucial in the workplace that if we owned our data going forward, that we would have more control over our futures. Jumping on to AI in society, this is going to be another big one that most people will focus on. The big danger here is that AIs can form relationships. They'll have personalities, and they can do it with millions of people simultaneously, and not from the same source, but created in a variety of different ways. And these relationships could be used in a nefarious way, or they can be used in a distracting way. Of people. We've already kind of set ourselves up for that because a lot of in fact, most of our relationships are done entirely online, and the video and the audio and the writing, it can all be done by AI. That can also lead to fragmentation. And then there's AI run reality. When AI fuels AR, and augmented reality is like take what Apple did last month and improve it a couple of generations, and it comes down to either contacts or light pair of glasses, and it's a digital layer overlaid over everything that you're seeing. Well, AI makes all that processing very inexpensive in terms of energy, so it gets lighter weight, it becomes all day, becomes pervasive, ubiquitous, and it makes the creation of AR characters and AR manipulation of the environment very, very easy and fast. And real life, people will, in large part, a lot of people will opt to live in that reality rather than our reality, and they'll start to diverge. And that can yield a lot of problems, insanity, or the reality you think you're in is different than the reality you're in, is going to be a major problem. Finally, so zooming over this stuff is human super empowerment through AI. Just like super empowerment with all the technologies we've had before, one person can act like 500 now with a lot of the tools, and then it's going to increase over time. That means that we'll see extreme wealth concentration where somebody can control through their dominant position and ownership of an AI, the equivalent of somebody doing 10 million jobs or 1 billion jobs. It can scale in nutty ways. And then it also means disruption is possible. And there's lots of outlier outcomes. If these, like for instance, and this is kind of a weird one, is that as we create personalities, add personality to these AR, simulated personalities, turn them into characters, turn them into tutors for your kids, turn them into companions for elderly, people that you interact with at work, your coworkers, that they could actually become people equivalents. And then you could scale that, to population that's declining, like in China and other places, in Italy, even potentially in the US in the not too distant future, is then supplemented by millions, if not billions, of AI equivalent people. Could be trillions, run their own economy and that. Like, that's a total outlier, but it's kind of a wild idea that could be possible. So anyway, 10 questions help you frame this, like put things in the right box, get your head around it. Not definitive, obviously, and hopefully this is helpful.
Very helpful. Just real quick, to kind of, you've zoomed through so many different scenarios. I just want to make sure that we cover a couple of basic questions, like who owns AI? I mean, who are the power sources? Who are the influencers? That I know it changes rapidly, but right now, today.
Just a couple of big companies. I mean, OpenAI has the leading one, and they contracted with Microsoft. So Microsoft basically owns the use of it. Google was way ahead, and they fumbled it. They thought it was too dangerous and decided not to release it. And also, they went to kind of a financialized management style, which got away from the entrepreneurial. And then there's thousands. There's new ones every day, focused on different topics in the image space, stability AI, and Midjourney. Those are the leaders in creating images, and then that will move to video and on and on and on. There's people who are building on these platforms. So there are tons of owners. There's also a kind of a gold rush going on right now. Is that we had the open internet, and there's a high correlation between the amount of data that you use in training AI and the quality of the AI that's built. So on the open internet, these early movers went out and grabbed everything, went on to Reddit, went on to Twitter, went on to Facebook to the extent they're possible, took everything that was not nailed down and let their AI see it and learn from it. And people started to wake up to that. These things are going to be worth tens of trillions of dollars in the not too distant future, and most valuable technological artifacts we've ever built. And the data sources were key to that. I mean, we all contributed to these things. We contributed data, and it's being used to build tens of trillions. So we're getting ripped off. Guys, that Twitter and Reddit thought they were getting ripped off, and so now they're restricting machine access to their networks. It's not hard to imagine that in 2-3 years' time, as the value of this data becomes apparent, that everything will be locked down, and the first movers in AI development will be the last movers, at least in the big ones. Lots of niche stuff going on, but the big language models, the big behavior models, you won't see it much beyond that.
All right. Well, there's a big theoretical background for everybody to think about. Christian has posted the 10 questions that John has referred to. So now we'll turn to the more practical practitioner view. Kevin.
Great. Thanks, Heather. And thanks, everybody, for joining today. It's an honor to be back in front of the alumni today. Kind of interesting in my own mind, how did I get myself in this position where, as an Intel officer who doesn't do anything about technology, in his day job, I find myself talking about artificial intelligence to our alumni. And that really started when I was back in our program trying to figure out what was I going to do for my thesis. And like probably many of you, I heard about AI and I was worried about it. And that really starting point in my journey has led me to work on some issues in my day job here at the Department of Homeland Security, but also led into my dissertation research. And really what I'm passionate about is thinking about what should Homeland Security and public safety officials be doing now, today, to worry about not just the risks that we have to worry about managing and potentially mitigating, but also what are those benefits and what are those benefits that we want to leverage. So my overarching for my portion of the talk today, I really want to emphasize 3 questions. And I'm trying to focus, if I'm on your side of the screen, worried about AI. And really the first one is, where should I start when it comes to thinking about those potential benefits and risks of AI? The second questions are really, what are those key issues that are most relevant to my job, my organization, but also the community I work and I support? And then finally, what do I do about it? What are the steps I should be taking to work on mitigating the risks, but also trying to leverage the benefits? To kind of set the stage, I think John did a great job talking about AI, where we are. I just want to talk real briefly on a little bit of level setting. And artificial intelligence, like many information technologies, has the potential to be rather a significant disruptive technology that can transform not just IT systems, but numerous aspects of our society. I think of it as transformational and disruptive in the way that, the automobile was to the horse and carriage industry. And really, when you think about the growth pattern and the growth trajectory of artificial intelligence, there's a lot of questions about how fast the technology will develop. But I do have an interesting anecdote that I want to share. And this comes from a recent interview on the Harvard Business Review's IdeaCast podcast. And it was for their current edition that deals with AI. And in an interview, Chris Young, who's the head of the strategy at Microsoft, who, as John said, they partner with OpenAI and they're really one of the leaders in this space. He talked about the companies in Silicon Valley, from the startups that they watched. And he said in the fall of last year, he was tracking, his team was tracking about 80 startups in Silicon Valley that they thought were developing really innovative, important AI tools and software programs. Today, just 9 months from that point, they're tracking 8,000. And this is just a radical shift in the development landscape. And it really shows where Silicon Valley and the developers think the money is. And that is just a quick anecdote to kind of show where the private industry is focused and where the research and development funds are focused. It kind of gives you a sense of what we may be up against in terms of timelines and pace of development. Also, there's different ways to think about AI, just very, very plainly. Narrow AI is commonly described what we have now, the machine learning tools, some of the other things, language processing systems. And this really just means machine learning. These are tools that can do discrete tasks better than humans. They can beat us at chess. They can solve equations quicker than a human can. But maybe they can't do more complex things. They're still not at that more general AI, which is not present yet. But if it is ever developed, as John talked about, that's a technology that would potentially outperform us at nearly every cognitive task. So we have the balance of trying to manage and contend with the current narrow AI technologies while also preparing for that potential of the general artificial intelligence, that real singularity moment where the AI and the computer does become able to outperform us at every cognitive task. So when I kind of think about these topics and think about what's on the horizon, I kind of put them from a practitioner perspective into a series of bins or buckets. And I'll try to talk through those today. And those really pertain around strategy and policy. What are those strategies and policies that our agencies will need to contend with the growth and development of artificial intelligence? What are the training and formal education opportunities that we should be thinking about, not just for ourselves as leaders in the Homeland Security field, but also entry level, the people coming up through our ranks at the mid levels, all of those kinds of things. Also, partnerships. What are those partnerships that we need to be having now? And who are those people or those associations, excuse me, that we need to be thinking about either expanding our partnerships or maybe starting new partnerships with. A lot of these may overlap, but a big one for me is also the ethics and legal considerations of artificial intelligence, especially when it comes to the data and the personal information and the information of our citizens that we use in our space. What does that look like, and what are the things we need to be worried about? A big one for me is also when we are procuring and purchasing systems and information technology systems for support our work. When you're perhaps bringing a new software platform into your office or into your operations, what are those things we need to be worried about? And then finally, perhaps the most important, public trust. What are the issues related to public trust that as practitioners in the Homeland Security enterprise, we need to be the most focused on to ensure that we can continue to have trust with our partners in the communities we serve while incorporating AI into our operations. So those are some of the high points I'm going to hit, and I'm looking forward to a discussion afterwards. To dive into the strategy and policy implications, the big thing I would say here about narrow AI and also growing tools is it has the potential to understand trends and patterns in really new and exciting ways. But do you have the strategies and the policies in place to align when those systems are coming online? As I kind of use that anecdote from Microsoft and the growth of Silicon Valley, these tools are very likely going to be here before we're ready for them. And a central component of these machine learning tools that we presently have is their ability to ingest and integrate data and information quickly and in ways that can provide new insights. Are we aligned to use those insights? And then also, for example, are we prepared to have procedures in place to allow the people that work for us to use those tools? To give an example, and a project I worked on here at DHS a few years ago looked at how computer-aided dispatch and records management system information could be used by artificial intelligence tools to help better understand crime and other kinds of threat-related issues in your community. And the thing that I found pretty early on was that a lot of the private vendors that sell technology to fusion centers, law enforcement agencies, fire departments were already trying to enable artificial intelligence and machine learning software into their software packages. And are you ready to ingest that kind of information into your organization, into your tools? Is the data ready to be ingested? There's a lot of implications for the data on the back end side of having that come into your operations. And what does that look like? So I think in terms of your own strategies and your policies, it's something to consider. Another one, and I'll talk more about ChatGPT because it gets a lot of headlines. ChatGPT has the ability, when you give it a question or a discrete topic, it can very quickly generate pretty well-developed essays, paragraphs that gives you answers to the question you pose to it. Are you prepared to have ChatGPT be used by your employees? Is that something that's appropriate? Are there limitations or policies you need to put in place to ensure that does not happen? If you have not played around with ChatGPT, I'd really encourage you to do so. It doesn't take long to go on to the OpenAI site, get your account, and start kind of seeing just how quickly it can generate information based on your search queries. So moving on from strategy, there's a lot there to both focus on managing the risks, but also trying to incorporate the benefits. And again, AI is a tool. It is can be used to do good things. It can be used for harmful things, and we have to make sure that we're looking at both aspects of that. In terms of training and formal education, a lot of the work that a lot of us do in this space, we know there are so many things that we have to make sure our employees are focused on in terms of training, whether it's entry level, every annual continuing training, all of the things we do. So adding training and pipelines of new information into our existing training blocks is always a challenge. So thinking about what are the things that need to be done is really something that I think is a good time to be really introspective of. Do you need formal education? Is there the need to include at the entry level for your employees training on what AI does, the implications of it? Or is it more of a continuing education process? What I would say and what I do is there's a lot of you can just do on your own. And I'll just, perhaps the colleagues on the site here can drop these in the chat, but some of my things I try to hit on a regular basis are 3 or 4 main areas. Number one is definitely the Future of Life Institute. They have a lot of reporting. They have a lot of information, podcasts, and good research papers. We've already talked about OpenAI. They have a research tab where they go through and talk about some of the things that are going on that they're working on. John talked about Google and DeepMind, and those are areas that they kind of conglomerate information. Also, some of the stuff can get kind of technical, so I encourage folks to listen to TED Talks, podcasts. I have a commute to work, so oftentimes I'm listening to the Future of Life series of podcasts on artificial intelligence, just trying to stay up abreast on what people are talking about. But ultimately, I think the thing to be focused on for us in terms of training and education is encourage your staff to be curious and be curious about AI and find ways to learn and bring that information into your organizations. My current job deals a lot with partnerships, and that's a big passion of us. This is, I think, one of the more important things to consider. Are there specific companies, organizations, associations you should engage with? One example going back to 2017 in the Monterey area was there was one of the first AI safety conferences at the Asilomar conference, and they developed 23 principles for AI safety. These were non-binding, good start, but when you look at those principles, which I think are fine and they're great, you didn't see a lot of Homeland Security, public safety, or national security perspectives in the group that developed them. There was an additional follow-on conference a few years later in Puerto Rico, where the ODNI, National Director of Intelligence, they did participate. But I really think that our community needs to be more proactive in these AI safety talks and make sure that the public safety and the Homeland Security perspective really is brought forward to how we should be thinking about this. I think this is going to be a continuing important part of our work, especially with talks of new federal regulations that are being considered. To summarize and wrap up with ethics and legal considerations, this is going to be a foot stomp to say, as much as it may be challenging to work with your legal teams, now is the time to be working with your legal teams. You're likely to encounter a lot of very challenging questions on, can you utilize your data in certain ways with new software tools? Keeping in mind, these tools are going to aggregate data in different ways that perhaps you don't have the authorities to collect that information is based off of. A lot of issues with privacy, protecting personal identifiable information, and how are you going to do that in a way that is adhering to the legal guidelines of the systems and the jobs that you have. Another big one for me is freedom of information requests. How do you ensure accountability and transparency? So these are all things that really need to be considered on the front end when you're bringing AI tools into your operations. One of my recommendations on this point, now's the time, if you have to prioritize who in your organizations need to learn about AI, I would say it's your legal offices. I would really recommend that your legal offices receive and build training on AI. Start thinking now about these difficult questions about how you'll use data, how your information will be used with these systems, and what are those implications that can protect your agency moving forward. Briefly, with procurement systems, one of the things I've seen just anecdotally from a few companies I've worked with that bring on AI to state and local partners is there's a lot of back-end costs. So you really have to focus on, what are you being sold? Is this what you need? Are you potentially overpaying for what they're selling you? And are you buying a marketing campaign saying artificial intelligence, but that's not really getting you what you need? So again, this is where it's important when you're developing your requirements to have those people involved. Think about, what does this look like? And having those partnerships with other agencies and other associations can help you build your knowledge in preparation of this. And finally, public trust. We're working in an environment where fear of artificial intelligence, it drives stories on 24-hour news cycles, it drives clicks on stories, and there are clearly a lot of valid issues to be worried about. But there are also a lot of fears of AI. They're just myths, at least currently. So that is one of the things that we'll have to be focused on. The Future of Life Institute has one of my favorite graphics that talks about artificial intelligence safety myths and realities. I'll try to drop that in the chat here when I'm done speaking. And I think the thing with AI is to remember it today, this may not be a risk, but that doesn't mean in the near future it will not be. And that's a real difficult model to think about with the pace at which these technologies are growing. In the end, I think when you're talking about AI tools with public trust, one example, we have the growth of real-time crime centers all across the country. They may want to utilize artificial intelligence tools to help provide situational awareness on the types of sensor feeds they're receiving, whether it's license plates readers, CCTV, other sensors. If that's aggregated in a way with less people that you can provide better situational awareness, that's great work. How does that work with the public trust? Is that going to be acceptable, or will it be viewed as kind of a big brother Orwellian state and AI and the computers kind of taking over public safety? So thinking about public trust and how you're going to bring people on is an important part of thinking about these technologies. My recommendation with the public trust is, like everything else we do, be proactive with the community and let them in on the discussions as you're procuring and you're thinking about these things. Develop strategies and policies that explain what you're doing and help explain what the risks and what the benefits are to these technologies. Finally, just to summarize my recommendations, if you're starting out or if you're looking at the concerns of AI, is really start building institutional awareness of both the risks and the benefits of AI. Focus on that foundational knowledge and building those awareness of the topics that really make the most sense to you. Go beyond the clickbait kind of scary headlines, really try to understand what's going on, but be open to the fact that if something is not a risk today, that doesn't mean 3, 4, 5 months from now, it will not become a risk. And that's a very dynamic situation that we have to be very focused on. Again, focus on partnerships. One of my personal goals is to help advocate for Homeland Security officials and expertise to be more present in discussions of AI safety, developments, and other things, and the impact on public safety from artificial intelligence as these technologies come on board. And then finally, consider both that risk-benefit situation, and I think using good critical thinking and structured techniques can help you understand what those things are for your agency, whether it's using red teaming, what if scenarios, a post-mortem analysis, all of those things, but kind of apply that SWOT analysis, looking at those opportunities and threats to determine what can be over the horizon for your agencies. One final thing I want to have, and I want to share a quote with you about AI safety and risks. The quote is, "Balancing the risks and benefits of AI requires careful consideration, ethical frameworks, and responsible development practices. It is essential to ensure that AI technologies are aligned with human values, fairness, transparency, and accountability to maximize the positive impact while mitigating potential risks." And that quote was generated by ChatGPT last night when I asked it for what are the benefits and risks. So that was generated by an AI. Thank you for your time. And I know John and I are looking forward to the discussion and having a good debate with you for our remaining time. Back to you, Heather.
Great, thanks. So Dan O'Connor asks, is AI and incestuous amplification driving hallucinations? Will it have a self-correction and sourcing function, positive feedback, or will it have a negative feedback and consume itself?
Okay, well, there's two different types of hallucinations here. Okay, so it's the hallucinations people are talking about now in terms of the getting bad search results from asking ChatGPT a question. The thing is, they rush to market with it, obviously, and it's surprising. It's an expert in language and how language is used in all these different contexts. And it's surprising that it can yield great search results or relatively good search results at all. But it does a pretty good job, and some of the answers are wrong. It'll give you bad links or give you bad references, but that's correctable. What you do is you preload it with an approved list or of books and links that are in scientific literature, and say restrict it to that, and we'll get better and better and better results where everything is valid. So I'm not worried about that being a problem for long. And the other one is the hallucinations of being in an AR generated environment. You already have people falling in love with AIs. When you add video and audio creation to that, they can have long chats with them and they would never know that they're talking to an AI. I've even seen games now, mods to games where you actually can talk to the characters. You go through, a conversion and go to ChatGPT and then come back out as voice of the character in the game. And that's just on the fly mods by people who are working on that. That's going to break people, and hallucinations are going to be common. That it's going to be hard for parents and hard for anyone, hard for keeping people in a box. You want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think just kind of the last point, I think the concern that I have with that and really the thing that AI I think really holds a lot of interesting benefit is and risk on both sides is the way it can integrate multiple technologies, right? So you're talking about augmented reality, virtual reality type systems integrated with Internet of Things kind of devices, and you're just having a completely new experience. And when you look at kind of the current mental health situation we have across the country and people having real challenges making connections already just with social media and all these tools that are far less sophisticated, I think we're just going to have more of a problem, and we need to be more aware of that. And it really is something that whether you're a parent, whether you're an educator, whether you're a mental health professional, it's going to be continuing to be a challenge as people continue to go from being just looking at the screen in front of them and not interacting with humans to now completely checking out into this augmented reality environments, whether it's the metaverse or something that goes beyond that. But yeah, I think that's a real challenge on the horizon.
Yeah, something you mentioned, the trust is important, and having good sources for for us to find out what's happening in AI. Do you have any cutting edge kind of resources that you can list in the chat that people can, you mentioned this institute, but are there other sources that people can rely upon to get information so they can make those strategies and policies?
Best recommendation I have is just to go out and play and use the stuff.
Yeah.
Your mid to low level employees are going to be doing that. That's how the internet arrived in most companies. It's that people who went out and played with stuff and they brought it in. And most organizations had an advocate saying, this is really cool, let's try this out. And they're going to do that. There's no replacement for actually going and get your hands dirty with this stuff. If you want to run an AI in your desktop, if you have a beefy PC, you can download Stability AI or one of the clones of Chat or OpenAI's ChatGPT, kind of pared down versions, and they run on your desktop. And you go through the process of seeing how they operate a little bit more closely. It's get your hands dirty, play, have fun.
Terrified fun. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
I was not terrified. It's cool. It's fun.
I would just add, Heather, I think being curious in general, it's a little bit of an overwhelming place to jump in because articles, if you pick up especially peer-reviewed items, can be really technical on the computer science side of it and the programming side. But there are so much research going on right now, not just in academic worlds, but also think tanks, other places for applications for healthcare information. And one of the anecdotes I heard recently is, we have this premise that we'll have better healthcare outcomes because we'll be able to learn more from the data on MRIs or those types of things. But the point still is the data coming in is the critical piece. So if you have data that is flawed, your AI is using flawed data, and that will not give you the outcomes you're looking for. So there really are a lot of implications to that. But there's a lot that we do with the department, that the department funds. There's a lot of things that our partners at Department of Justice are funding on AI research. I think be curious and look at all these things, and you'll see the things that are most relevant to your operations and your aspects of the Homeland Security mission space.
Matthew asks, is there pending regulation to disclose interaction with AI?
There's lots of talks, and I think it's
Yeah.
like all over the map. And then
Yeah.
there's also efforts to do it on the kind of within the industry as a standard. It's like putting watermarks on
Yeah.
AI generated images and then disclosing or little indicators that you're talking to an AI. Yeah, we'll see where that goes. I mean, it's easy to break. I mean, I could see a Twitter, if Musk was really nefarious, he'd build a chat GPT equivalent using his data sources, and then have a couple million AIs generated that will have conversations with everybody online in positive ways that make them feel really good about using the tool. And you'd have these conversations with these people, and that relationships would build and make you more active and more likely to interact with the tool. Is he obligated to disclose that? Not yet.
Yeah, I think the regulation piece, Heather, is a great question. It's gaining more and more traction on Capitol Hill just this week. I am probably not overly optimistic that they'll get it right. If any of you watch the interactions of Congress with social media companies, there's a lot of learning that we have to do on why and how AI works to be effective, I think. I will say there are a lot of leaders in the AI research community that are thinking about safety and really being proactive about ethical standards and those kinds of things. But it's a huge research community. And this is also where this is not just a US industry, it's a global industry. And there are national security implications of what our nation state competitors are concerned with that we are concerned with as well. So there's a lot out there that's a real challenge in this space. I think regulations isn't just what the United States wants to do, but that's going to be a global situation given we've already had this issue with social media companies and global regulations. I think it's going to be even more complex when we talk about trying to apply some kind of regulation to these tools, especially as they're emerging so quickly and growing so quickly. How do you keep those regulations relevant? So it's going to be a real challenge.
Gary writes, a professor at Harvard Kennedy School wrote an article this week about the use of AI to influence elections. He posits the creation of Clogger, which forms online relationships and influences viewpoints. How can we prepare for these tactics, and how do we prepare Americans for detecting these types of information or disinformation campaigns?
Oh, no, AI was already used in the last election.
Yeah.
It screened out tons of topics and tons of people going into that. So the horse has left the barn. It's already been used. And it can, I don't know how, no one's going to disclose how it was used to the extent that you could actually develop a model for determining what percentage of the vote was gained or lost by different candidates. But it's already there, and we'll see more of it. And I'm not too worried about that. I mean, it's going to be just, part of the tussle. Each side is going to try to work on ways of doing that. It may be, the big problem will be maybe the corporations, the big networks working in tandem as a unit to do things. And that could change our system pretty dramatically fast. It already has to a certain extent, but it could get worse.
Yeah, I would just add, these are concerns that we have. We know nation state actors, organized criminal groups are first adopters of any new technology that gives them an upper advantage over what they're trying to do. We've seen, basic chat bots for multiple elections try to influence elections and influence viewership on social media. So that's just going to continue to be a more difficult challenge as these tools get more sophisticated, and they're able to really interact with you in ways that you just don't expect a computer or a machine or software to be able to do. So if we already have people who are susceptible to this with pretty basic chatbots, it's only going to be a bigger problem moving forward.
Yeah, the mental health aspect of this is going to be quite a challenge for an already taxed system. So that's a whole.
Well, you think of everything that went wrong in terms of social and governmental with social networking. Okay, now multiply it by 10. And most of it's going to be self-inflicted at the societal end, at the individual level. So you can avoid a ton of it in terms of its impact on you, but just by thinking about what you're doing and helping your family members to make good choices in terms of how they use it. But it's going to be rough.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Bijan, one of our instructors, says, if tweets, Facebook posts, et cetera, form the basis of the large language, is the model we are dealing with essentially code breaking based on Turing's work in Bletchley Park. The machine doesn't know what it's reading. What it knows is word placement and adjacencies, proximities to other words. In effect, is this code breaking and then responding based on the same parameters?
There's a did it figure out some essence about us? I mean, how we use language and how we've used it in the past is basically the essence of what our society is, underneath it all. It's kind of like the platform for society, and the kind of legacy of the breadcrumbs explaining how it was used in the past is all the stuff that's on the network now. All the conversations, all the books, all the papers, all the everything. So it figured out us, figured out ourselves. You could even say that a large language model like ChatGPT is a societal artifact, right? It's our society distilled down, and it will get more complex and more elaborate over time. Well, I'm on more and more stuff to that, and it's gonna be interesting to see where it goes and how competitors to that will work. I mean, it's easy to focus on the big one, but there's also tons of smaller AIs at different, going after different niches and the like.
Vincent writes, for those building, designing security capabilities into systems, should AI be addressed as a threat in designing requirements, and how?
Yeah, great question. I think you're going to see in this space, especially if you're on the law enforcement or public security, public safety side, the market is going to be sending you AI tools. That's already where the marketplace is. A lot of the main contractors that'll be sending things to you and trying to get you to procure these systems will already be leveraging these tools. So that's already in your there. Exactly. They already are. Exactly. So how do you handle that in terms of the risks potentially of that? There are a lot of benefits to that. So I think, again, this conversation for me is always both sides of the coin. It's managing and leveraging those advantages while also managing the risks. For me, it's where the data coming in is so important, right? There was a kind of a hypothetical argument I was reading about the other day where it's like, how would you teach a machine about the Nazis? Would you include all information? Would you extract information? What information would you load into it to learn about the Nazis? And then what would the implications of that be based on what information you provided to it? So with systems and law enforcement, do you have the agreements to leverage partner data? Or are there limitations to those agreements? And those are the big risks that I'd be worried about. If you're already sharing information across jurisdictions or across authorities, are those authorities and all those policies relevant to this new technology? Because it's going to do it in ways we haven't thought about before. And it's going to mix the data and integrate it in ways that might be new and more challenging. Those are the big risks I'm worried about.
Yeah, I mean, AI is going to be in every tool, every product, even the physical products that we buy, it's going to be incorporated in. And which is one of the reasons why we shouldn't let China siphon data, because data is the essence of all these AIs through TikTok. That's the real worry about TikTok. It's not the present hacking of consumer information or whatever. It's the data they're sending them in terms of training their models for Western market access. But what you need to do is get control over your interactions with those AI tools and the data it can see and interact with on your premise, and make sure that they can't use it in training their AIs, unless you extract a big hunk out of them, right? If they use that data, those interactions as training, you're losing the value of your organization to a certain extent, or losing control. And they would say, all we did is hear the conversation and deliver a service, but you have to have that in the agreements, and you have to make sure it's enforceable.
All right, we only have a couple minutes left, so I'd really like to know from you both, what are we not thinking about? Let's talk big picture about future threats.
One thing I was pressing on in the Senate hearings a couple of years ago, kind of fell on deaf ears, like me telling the House Armed Services Committee in 2009 to get out of Afghanistan, but it didn't work then. It didn't work with these guys either, is that we needed to get ahead and have data ownership. It works in every organization, the workplace to the consumer space. We need to have some ownership of our data, and that gives us an economic stake in this economy that's being built, and some level of control and presence. If we're just being strip mined constantly, it's going to go bad very, very quickly. Almost all the bad scenarios start with strip mining data from people. They learn a new task, you pay for the, getting taught how to do that new task, and then have the AI strip you of that data and then say, okay, now you have to go into debt again to learn the next new task. No, it's not a good future. So data ownership, and there's ways to do it. It's just that, I'd rather have a whole industry of lawyers and data bankers protecting my interests going forward, rather than the guys who are trying to extract it.
And I would say maybe I'm a little bit more optimistic than John, not a lot, but a little bit, that as a society, we've able in the past to overcome these disruptive technologies and figure out how to learn and live with them. But that took a lot of work. So I really think what I would love to see, kind of renew my comment from my earlier pieces, really for our community, all 800,000 law enforcement officials, all of the firefighters, everybody that works on Homeland Security and public safety, to really be a more proactive member in these conversations, because the threats that we all face every year are more complex. Every time we do an annual State of the Union of what we're up against, it's always more complex, more difficult. It was really the intent of my thesis research when I was a student, was how will AI be used for malicious purposes and make our lives harder? And those are things that are already, the scenarios that I was looking on for future studies are present day problems that law enforcement and others have to deal with. So I think for us, it's a call to action for us to be more proactive with having a louder voice, because I think we have an important voice in this space as our society looks at these tools and the implications.
So you're saying the responsibility of AI is everybody's, not just your tech persons or the person naturally assigned to it in the future?
Yeah, it'll be driven by market factors probably, and there's so much money to be made and opportunity there. But we have to keep in mind the implications. And in the public safety world, I think we're always reactive to that, right? We're reactive to a new development. We're reactive to a new change. This is one we really need to be proactive on, and we need to be focused on trying to be there right with industry to make sure they're thinking through the implications of their technology. And we're seeing that now with social media, and we need to be more proactive as it comes to AI.
Well, gentlemen, we just did a quick spin through the world and threats and opportunities. We can't think of it as a solely negative thing. There definitely are opportunities for us to excel in the space. And I just want to thank you for your time today. And thanks everybody for joining us today. We do have a lot going on at the center, and we're looking forward to just your participation. Thank you to everybody who's been sending me folks to recruit. And if there are changes in your agency, I sure would like to hear about them. I really, I agree with you, Angie, about this particular topic needs to be more addressed. And hopefully we'll have a round 2 and 3 for Alumni Hour in the next coming months. So thank you all for your time, and we'll see you soon.